it is my pleasure to welcome you all. Today is very special for so many reasons. But before we get started, I really want to thank all of our season sponsors. They make all of the programming at the club possible every season, as well as our presenting sponsor of today's program, KPMG. Thank you very much. And our spotlight sponsors, the Chicago Cubs, Northwestern Medicine, and PwC. On to our program. This is very auspicious for us. Today is 2 years to the date that we left our office to go work at home for a couple weeks. You know, we all thought, we'll go do this for a couple weeks and, see you all soon. So it's very momentous that 2 years to the date, we are back here for our first in-person program at these gorgeous CDW offices. It's just really, really exciting. So thank you very much. Our special guest, Chris Leahy, President and Chief Executive Officer of CDW. She's going to share her incredible story with us. And I want to thank them personally. CDW has been such a steadfast partner of the Executives Club and our mission to connect and grow the region's business leaders. They sponsor our business technology program. They are a seasoned sponsor of the club. Leaders at CDW have served on our board of directors, our advisory council, our membership council, as well as mentors in the club for decades. Many of them are in the room today. Thank you all so much for everything that you do for the Chicago business community. Moderating our conversation is Linda Imonti, who's the Office Managing Principal for Chicago at KPMG. She's also the second vice chair for the board at the Exec Club. So before we turn it over to Linda and Chris, I want to direct your attention over here to Tom Ricketts. He could not come in person, but he wanted to send a very special message. He's, for those of you who don't know who that is, he's the chairman of the board for the Chicago Cubs. He also sits on the Exec Club board of directors, and he wants to share a few words about Chris Leahy. So I'll turn it over to Tom, and then we'll kick off the conversation.
Thank you, Margaret. Once again, my name is Tom Ricketts, chairman of the Chicago Cubs. And today it is my great honor to introduce Chris Leahy, CEO of CDW. Chris grew up in an entrepreneurial family and went to law school to help companies. She joined CDW as its first general counsel in 2002. What Chris and the management team have accomplished at CDW is simply amazing. If you remember CDW from the early days, it was a computer discount warehouse. It was a place you went to buy computers, laptops, desktop. Over time, they've transformed CDW into a company that provides enterprise-wide technology solutions for literally thousands of companies around the world. CDW has over 14,000 coworkers, and Chris will say, don't call them employees, they're my coworkers, servicing over 150 countries with a market cap of over $23 billion. They are also the technology solutions provider for the Chicago Cubs, as well as a corporate partner of ours, with the W Club powered by CDW in the ballpark. With that, it is my great privilege to introduce Chris Leahy, CEO of CDW.
Well, thank Tom, even though he's not here. Nothing like having Tom open up for you and do your introduction. I'm always really excited to roll these programs out. I'm honored to have the opportunity to do a number of our CEO series interviews, and especially honored to do the one with you here today. And Tom referenced, multi-brand company, amazingly, 38 years in business, or just shy, I think, of 38 even, and 21 billion in revenue, and we are sitting in your second location, right, today, new and exciting. So thanks for letting us be here with you today. This space is absolutely amazing. But it's great to have you here today. And we're going to start out with, I want people to know who you are and what your life journey has been and your career journey. And we always get a chance to prep for these sessions. And so we get a little peek purview into what this story is, and I think that it's an amazing story. Tom gave us some insights to it. But the first thing I want to do is just hand it to you and have you tell us who you are and what your life journey has been.
Yeah, it's a big question, and it's funny because I think when we were prepping, I think I said, the question I ask when I interview people is, I've seen your resume, I've read it all. Tell me what your life journey's been. So you just turned it around on me. Thanks for that. Tom referenced my upbringing. I grew up in an entrepreneurial household. My dad at 26 decided that he didn't want to work for other people, and he and two of his friends started a business. And he ran his own businesses from then on, and some of them were very successful, and some of them were not. So I would just say that a big influence in my life has been my family. I grew up with 4 siblings, so it was 7 of us in the bottom half of a very small house, and all I remember is joy and fun and respect. And I was born in Rhode Island. My grandparents, both sides were there, all my aunts and uncles, and there were a lot of them. And so we used to go up there for the summer. That was our summer camp. And so just an extended family. A couple things I would say is some of the things that have stuck with me and I think have been guiding principles for me are, my dad used to often say to us, when things are hard, make it simple. And it sounds contradictory, but he's absolutely right. So generally growing up, whatever I've been doing, or my siblings, frankly, I think we've all learned to have some key guiding principles that we live by, and just keep it simple, because that tends to illuminate the path a little more. So in my household, for example, we had Leahy rules, and one of them was give your honest best. And it wasn't your best, it was your honest best. And if my dad looked you in the eye and asked that question, was that your honest best? You had a feeling it probably wasn't. But by having simple principles that guided me, I think every step of the way, it was about that simplicity and always trying to do my best. The other thing I learned growing up in an entrepreneur's household is, I think this is really important, is empathy. So, my dad, we used to bring turkeys and grapefruits to the people who worked in my dad's plant, very much like Michael Krasny did at CDW. It was really like a family, and I saw how my mom and dad both treated those that worked with them and for them. And when you grow up with that, you just have a real respect and empathy for all those you work with. And I think ultimately that empathy, if I think about whether it was the law or whether it's at CDW or whether it's a gathering like this, I think that empathy really translates into how somebody is experiencing you or your brand. And so again, just leading with simple concepts like, how do you experience Chris Leahy? How do we as coworkers experience each other? And how do our customers experience CDW? And just to that point, one of the things we've been talking quite a bit about, and I mentioned this to you, is energy. It was a bit of an epiphany, I think, during the pandemic, this notion of energy and how important we at CDW think it is going forward. And not so much, some of it is because it was hard and it took a lot of energy, but then thinking about what an athlete does and must do, baseball, whatever it is, to perform, and replenishing your energy and your muscle so you can be at your peak performance. We've really now started to take that to heart at CDW, and we're all athletes and being very serious about the experiencing of each other and how energy is really driving that. So, I didn't give you the ins and outs of my growing up, but I grew up in a wonderful family. I was very fortunate, and I worked since I was 14, which also brought a level of, I would say, customer service. As a waitress, it was always a challenge who I was going to get at my table. Was it going to be a family with the kids who were making a lot of noise? And then my goal was to calm the kids down and let mom and dad enjoy. So I'd be figuring out how to do that. Or was it a couple having a romantic dinner? I'd bring an extra drink and all that kind of stuff. But doing things like waitressing and just all the jobs I've had throughout my life, I think have given me the empathy and acute awareness of how people experience me, and therefore our brand at CDW.
Right, I was going to go to the awareness point, and you got there. I think it does give you, but there's a certain level of awareness you build just in a family of that size.
Yeah, I can tell you, we did the Sundays with the Dairy Queen Dash, and okay. You guys got to like Dairy Queen, come on, Absolutely. How could you not? And if the house was not clean by 6 p.m., we didn't get to do the Dairy Queen Dash. And it was the 5 of us in charge, and back to simplicity, here was the instruction. The house has to look like something your grandmother would be proud of. Okay, I'm talking like, 7, 6, 5, 3, and 18 months. The 18-month didn't do much, but think about it. It's like we had to figure out how to figure it out, and I think we only missed the Dairy Queen dash once, and it was not my fault. Just to be clear.
But what is interesting about that is that and the entrepreneurial kind of family and background, you can see where some of the problem-solving skills, right, early on for you came from.
Yep.
Right? And
Yep.
where you built, because here's the house, it has to be cleaned. You guys figure it out. The 18-month-old maybe not contributing much at that point, but you had to figure out and solve that. So then project that forward into your life story and your career.
Yeah, well, and I'm going to actually give the CDW team a huge amount of credit, not myself, projected forward, because I think we're an organization that has always focused on evolving to be better for the customer and being where the customer is going to be at their next intersection. And again, what we found out acutely during the pandemic is how important agility is, and the ability to, the choice to enter a conversation without starting with it won't work because. And the choice to enter a conversation with, that's a really interesting point, let's build on that. Okay, and how important that became during the pandemic. And when we talk about agility, what do we really mean? It means the ability to adapt, to be adaptive, and to pivot. That's another thing that, if something doesn't work, you fix it quickly and move on. We talk about course correction. We want to be in a position to course correct and not dig our heels in and just continue along a path that's not working. That all comes with being really clear about what you want to do for us satisfying the customer. The other thing is with coworkers, we started the pandemic, and well, let me connect to one thing. A story I once heard from a female CEO, and it was a company going bankrupt. Okay, and it was Christy Hefner, and she said, "I took over the helm of the company, and I told the team that we need to save the company. It's just that simple, and just that hard." And when the pandemic hit, and like everybody here, we had a number of people going home. We had a number of people in the front lines who were still, we were protecting and keeping safe, but they were out in the front lines. We sat back and we said, what really matters here? You can start with policy or you can start with people. And we said, we're starting with our people. We have to make sure our customers are served. We need to make sure our coworkers are safe. And we need to support our communities. That's it. 1, 2, 3. Every decision we're making is tied to doing that. And again, kudos to the team, because our leaders and our coworkers just rose to the occasion. Did a lot for each other, did a lot in the community of Chicago and beyond. But it's the simplicity of knowing what you're trying to accomplish and why you're trying to accomplish that gets a whole organization behind. And for me, makes me convicted. Yeah. I want to be, I think a lot of you know this, and I say this, back when I'm interviewing people, what do I ask myself? What's my objective? What do I want walking out of this? I want to get to know the person. That's why I asked the journey question. But the other thing is I want them to walk away feeling like they could have a life career at CDW. I want them to go, what do people care about? Opportunity and impact. Opportunity and impact. I want people to feel like they will have opportunity through their entire life. They will be able to grow throughout their various periods of their life, when they're married, not married, have elder parents, whatever it is, and that they can have an impact where they care about having an impact. That's pretty simple. It's not easy, but it's really simple, opportunity and impact, and everybody grows.
And we'll jump back on a couple topics I want to go back to about just, kind of the vision of who CDW is to you. But since we're here, I want to keep going on this, which is around people and the pandemic and how it shifted and altered. And you and I had a chance to talk about the great rebalance.
Yeah.
But we also talked a lot about how it shifted where people are at now and what they expect. And you talked a little bit about this, which is, they want to know that there is a purpose. But talk to the group a little bit more about helping folks going forward now as we're coming into a different phase of this. How are you going to maintain that kind of passion and that culture around being connected to a purpose and kind of move into the future in a new way of working?
Yeah. It's a great question, and I think it's something we're all wrestling with. And I would start with we're not going to get it perfect from the gate. We're just not, and we have to be aware of that, and therefore we have to be willing to try things and adjust and readjust. I think it's really important going in with a headset where it's a mindset where you don't have a piece of paper and say, here's the exact roadmap. Again, it's we're people first, policy second, and we're also leading from the edge. So what do I mean by that? We have an amazing team. We call our coming back together Reunite. We started that a couple of years ago, and we use the IT for technology. We capitalize that and use that in our branding. So Reunite was really cool. I think I saw my general counsel here. He apparently did some singing to the song and came up with the name. But Reunite has recently turned into Reignite. Okay? Because there's an awareness that we might not have this big bang back in the office and everybody coming back. But what we need to do is give some guiding principles, like things like intentionality. Okay? So you might think about it as the inverse of how we've planned our lives. Instead of planning, okay, people are in the office and setting up meetings, why do we need to be together and when? So you could start with leadership and frontline. Why? Okay, now those are set. When do teams need to be together? Get that down, and then the leaders decide. And they have to watch and be very intentional, in my mind, because one of the things I worry about is we're rebounding back to everybody wanting to be together and excited about it, but we can't forget about those who are maybe uncomfortable. And so for our leadership team in particular, it is about letting them design, okay, how they want to operate and test and refine, and making sure that they have the structure to do it. So some things are done by design, other things are kind of personalized to the team, and we have to have the structure. And our team knows we talk about this a lot. The technology will work when you come back into the office, but it is harder because now you're balancing, home and office, but there are things that just have to be seamless. So creating the structure, allowing people the leaders to make decisions with their teams, and staying attuned and intentional. I think more than ever, we have to stay attuned. I think more and more companies are doing, climate surveys and engagement surveys. We're doing the same thing. We're pulsing much more frequently. But it can't be kind of command and control from the center. It just can't be. It has to be at the edges, leading from the edges, and making sure that we're course correcting as opposed to allowing things to turn into problems down the road. You can end up with biases or things like that, and we just can't let that happen.
You guys have always been and continue to be, customer first, customer first, customer first, and people and customer. How have you had to modify and shift? A little bit for looking back, but then also so much more importantly, we're in this pivot point right now.
Yep.
How are you looking at that going forward?
Yeah, let me start with the history, because I think it's really important to understand that this is not something new to CDW. So Tom mentioned Michael Krasny, who in my mind was a genius. He created the channel. It was about making technology easier to access, and boom, a technology channel was created. Michael had a very powerful and simple way to think about the business. He created something called the circle of service, which is customers at the center of every decision we make. And the first circle of service was really quite amazing, because he drew this box around the circle which had the customer, and it had all the touch points of the organization, from sales to finance, and it just went through. And it was a lot of words, but it said, good experience, continue. Good experience, continue. Bad experience, lose sale. Bad experience, lose sale. Bad experience, lose job. It was pretty stark. And we've changed it a little bit since then. But we were a small business, and it was a sales forward company. But you gotta satisfy the customer. Okay, so it's very visceral. And the other was happy coworkers equals happy customers. So that's the service profit chain, but said very simply. When you have coworkers who like coming to work, like working with each other, know that we will care for each other and be there for each other, and have opportunity back to growing, the opportunity to grow and have an impact on each other, on our customers, and on the community, he intuitively knew that then those coworkers will treat the customers the way they need to be treated. Those coworkers will be innovative. We talk at CDW now about, I love this, the big and little I of innovation. So you have little I's, medium I's, and big I's. And sometimes companies can get very caught on the big I's. You know, we've got to do these transformational innovations. And it's really the little I's that differentiates us, I think, at CDW. People put them in their pockets and they think about them, or they come to somebody and say, I've got this little innovation, and it turns into something very, very powerful. Michael knew that. I mean, he knew that it's all about the people, and we wouldn't be a business without our coworkers and them taking care of our customers. I didn't mention before the purpose statement. I think that's important because you asked how this is going to change going forward in terms of connectivity. CDW, what we say we do is we make technology work so that people can do great things. And I think that's really important because it describes exactly what we do. You know, every device you touch, every piece of software, every cloud environment, everything that you touch that is technology related, CDW manages that for businesses, for healthcare organizations, for educational institutions. We work with those organizations. Everything you touch, we're probably part of that. Technology is just an enabler, right? It's an enabler for people to do great things. And when you have this notion of CDW helps people to harness the promise and the power of technology to ignite the world to excellence, that's something to be proud of. And I think there's a unique relationship our coworkers therefore have, which is this connectivity to customers and this commitment to customers that shines through. Now, as we think going forward, back to experience. How does a coworker look at CDW and say, this is why I'm here? Or how does a coworker think their life has changed and now I'm going to reevaluate where I want to be? Well, call it a scorecard, call it what you want, but there's something that people look at, the lens they look through to determine where they want to be. And you know, we think about that in terms of our coworkers, and we think about 4 things that I think pretty much everything can fit into. It's the work you're doing, it's the people you're working with, it's the rewards you're getting, right? And it's the environment you're in. You know, it's the people, it's the purpose, it's the work, and it's the rewards. And then we have a very specific goal, okay? We want to be inspiring in all those. We don't want to just provide the tools so people feel like they have the ability to get their work done. We want people to have the tools and work with others so they feel inspired. There's a big difference between I can get my job done and I'm inspired to do my job. I see a coworker who is having a tough time, and I just naturally go over and say, how can I help? I notice on a Zoom, somebody looks a little de-energized. I'm the manager. I'm going to send something later and see if I can see what's going on because I notice those things. Why do I notice those things? Because I care. But it's the scorecard. We've got to always, we say, we're going to look at ourselves like a customer. How does a customer experience us? How does a coworker experience us is as important, if not more important.
Switching a little bit, and you referenced this a little bit in kind of the changing times right now, and your purpose and your statement of make technology work so people can do great things. And I think I got,
you did.
Was that close?
You got it right on, dead on.
Oosh. That's changing, and that's changed over the last 2 years. And there's probably a different pace in which you're gathering feedback from your customer and what they need from you. There's probably feedback you're gathering even from your own coworkers on what they need to be able to work now in today's environment. How's that shifted for you, and has that changed your innovation engine and or the way you work on a daily basis?
Yeah, it's a great question, especially in our industry, right? Because technology is now essential to it's essential to everything. Every industry, everything we do, work, life, play, grow, win, compete, all those things. Technology is right at the center of that. And it's changed more quickly in the past couple of years, both technological advance, but also because of the pandemic and the remote everything and models changing, and we've obviously felt that. So what have we kind of consciously done and subconsciously done? On a conscious level, we really have started to think about innovation as a continuous cycle. And it's almost kind of stepping out of a big, we talk about being the power of big and small, a big and small company, the power of big, which is really important, but the power of small. And really taking that to heart with innovation, because back to the little eyes, medium eyes, and big eyes, if we have not only the whole organization thinking about ideas as power, even if they end up not coming to fruition, but ideas are power. The more ideas we can get into the system, and we do have actually a team. It's an innovation funnel that we've now built that we're trying to get, call it crowdsourcing, just trying to get innovative ideas into the funnel and be very disciplined about taking a look at them. As I said, making a choice not to come at innovative ideas with the notion that they won't work because, okay? And having folks in the organization who are not just the executives at the top, but deep in the organization, like a team that is closest to the customers. So we've created a process, and I hate to use the word process around innovation because it almost sounds counterintuitive, but it's really important. Because if you want a speed to success, you need to get from idea to customer problem solved fast. And so we're trying to do two things. One is having this funnel, like a process where people feel free to bring ideas and we assess them much more quickly than we did before. We're creating, we've got these groups called squads. We're trying to use different words than we used to word like pilot. I like pioneer. We pioneer things, right? Squads are a speed to point of view. We have an inkling about something competitive in the market, and we don't want to take 6 months to kind of do a lot of market research, et cetera. We put a squad together and say 4 weeks we want an answer. And you pull in the people who have the best insights, and it's not an answer of we should do the following. It's a point of view. It's a hear what we think. So it's turning on its head this notion of solving something with incrementally getting to the best answer. And we do it both through process and then also just encouraging people to be, there's nothing wrong with an idea that doesn't make it. There's everything wrong with having a group of people that don't feel comfortable putting ideas out on the table.
Yeah, you mentioned another piece of that, which was the speed at which we have to do it now. Your industry, the industry I'm in, that speed has increased so greatly over the last couple of years.
Yep.
Even more so, and I continue to going forward from here for a certain number of years, going through the shifts we're going through right now.
Oh, 100%. And 100%. And it's back to agility and all those words that we're all using. What does that really mean? It's a mindset of being adaptable and being growth-oriented. It is understanding, I'll call it modularity. In software, I'd say it's microservices because it's the concept of having a big organization where you can change pieces of it without having the whole thing crumble on itself. And having a team where you can change out pieces of it without having the whole thing crumble on itself. That's really important, and that's a different mindset, and it's frankly a different systems architecture as a big organization. But I think doing that with the mindset of leading from the edge, I think it's created great agility in our organization, and we're going to continue to really support and fuel that.
Yep. I'm going to switch topics pretty dramatically here, but before I do that, I do want to just remind everyone, if you have questions that you want us to start looking at or asking, if you have questions for Chris, send them through. I'm getting them up here, so happy to insert those and ask as we go. I haven't seen any come across yet, so if there's any coming in, they're not on my screen yet. I want to switch. There's something that you and I talked about when we met, which is amazing, very difficult to do, and incredibly impressive that your team and all your coworkers kind of pulled this off over the last 8 quarters. And let's make sure I have the stat right. 8 acquisitions in 8 quarters.
Yes. Yes.
During a pandemic.
Yes.
Let's just be clear here. 1 acquisition in 8 quarters during a pandemic is a lot to accomplish. Talk to us about that. That's an incredible just focus and drive, and I think it talks a lot about just the organization's commitment to your vision.
Yeah. That's exactly it right there. You're exactly right. It's commitment, but it's commitment to the customer. And so we have, like most companies, we do a pretty rigorous strategic planning process every 3 years. Of course, going forward, that's going to be refined because you don't wait 3 years anymore. But we went through that in 2019, and we were really clear on what we perceived our customers were going to need based on their feedback. And it was certain areas where we had to really build our capabilities in a way that we had both depth and breadth. So think of security, right? I mean, think of what's going on in the world today and the concerns about not the human toll, but also cybersecurity. And the ability to be able to be what I like to call a vital partner. I'm sure my team's kind of laugh at me a little bit behind my back, but I think of it this way. I don't want to be like an earlobe or a little toe or something. I want to be a vital organ to our customers, like they can't live without us. And we were clear on what we thought that was going to take. You can't have a conversation about somebody's technical environment without talking security. Okay, so we had clarity, right? We also knew we needed to speed to those capabilities, and so we knew how long it would take us organically to build them, and we didn't want to wait. So we were pretty clear on what we're trying to do. And when we went into the pandemic, and I actually think about integration this way, I would almost think about it as kind of going around the curve, where you slow down a little bit to take the curve, right? You got to slow down, but then you just accelerate out. And that's what the team literally did. We kind of slowed down a bit, paused, made sure we were doing everything appropriately to keep our folks safe and everything that had to happen at the beginning of the pandemic. And then we said, now we got to get back to it. I mean, our customers were needing us. I heard the word help me from customers more in 2 years than I ever have in my life. So we slowed a little bit to kind of assess and then accelerated right out. And that comes from commitment, clarity in the vision, commitment to the vision, and conviction of the team. And it also comes with the DNA that is CDW, which is we are a people business. And when you assess deals, for us, it's financial, operational, and strategic, but it's also culture. We have not done deals because we didn't think there was a good cultural fit. That's really important. We've said, won't fit. It just doesn't fit with our culture. People aren't as important. So having that natural DNA, because integration, as you know, and coming together is scary for the other side sometimes. We try to give them a nice hug, but not too strong a bear hug. And it's because I think the teams are very sensitive to, coworkers.
And I would assume, doing 8, that your integration approach is probably different for each one, depending on their culture and also their reaction to it.
Yeah, some of them are larger, some of them are smaller. The most recent one is very large. It's $2.5 billion revenue, so that's a large one for us. And some were under $100 million. So certainly there are going to be differences, but nonetheless, the mantra is kind of always the same. It's customer first. It's speeding the value to the customer. So whatever the intention is in bringing in an acquisition, we're really clear on what we're trying to achieve for the customer. And we are very quick to integrate, very quick to integrate, to bring ourselves together is the right way to say it. And then it's all about measuring ourselves in terms of speed to value to our customers. Yes, we look at keeping coworkers and retention and everything you would think about and the financials, but it's how fast are our customers feeling like we're bringing this solution to them and it's one company, a joined up company, not 2 different companies coming into the same customer. So that's, again, pretty simple but hard to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a question on here specifically related to acquisition. So I want to, they called it an acquisition spree. So how do you plan to keep it simple as you integrate cultures of the companies, which by its nature is very difficult? I think you spoke a little bit to that, but I think there's a culture tone to that question, which is how do you, and you said you're very careful because there's a balance. You've got to maintain some of the old, but bring them into the new.
Yeah, the how. The how is the most important in pretty much everything. First, I'm going to go back to mindset because I'm one of those people who thinks mindset's everything. It's how you enter a conversation. It's how you lead a team. Whatever your mindset is, it's going to be noticed. Whatever your energy is, it's contagious. So with integration, It's very important as the acquiring company to be open-minded. And it's very important to catch each other when we're not. And we can't do it that way because this is how we do it. We have to be very intentional about catching ourselves. So open-mindedness and the true belief that the way somebody else does something could be better for us. An absolute belief in that, number one. Number two, it is back to leading from the edge. So when I think about the most recent acquisition, I mean, it was astounding how many gatherings we had in person, safe, in the first 2 weeks, okay? Where the senior vice president of corporate sales and her leaders went to San Antonio, which is where their headquarters is, and met with their leaders, came together personally to get to know each other and talk, where sales teams got together personally, golf course, outside, whatever it was. But within 2 weeks, I would say 60% of their organization, which is about 2,600 people, had met CDW folks. It's really hard to see a big hairy monster when you've met people, okay? When you don't know things, you fill in the blank clearly. They just had their sales kickoff in San Antonio. It was really nice to be back together, and there were 50 CDW folks. I was there, and there were almost all of our executive team, but 50 other coworkers there to work together and get to know each other. It sounds so simple, but it's so important when you have a personal relationship with somebody and you can talk one-on-one as opposed to reading the memo, and here's what we're doing. I think that makes all the difference in the world. So we can say culture all we want, but it's all about then what you actually do. And it's the mindset, and it's the getting together very quickly. I think those two things are the most powerful.
Oh, really interesting. There's a question in here about diversity and the diversity of your leadership team. And I want to make sure we cover that because I think there's some great things you and I talked about that part of the organization and what you've been able to accomplish there. But I also want to make sure we still hit, and we're at the 15-minute warning we just got.
Okay.
Chris and I learned on our prep call that we could talk for a long time. I think that the other one is to talk about the great resignation and the talent that you and I wanted to make sure we hit before we left the session. But I'd love for the group to hear more about your diversity and maybe a little bit about your community efforts and especially, they've changed over the last 2 years. So maybe that part of your organization.
Yeah, so diversity, equity, inclusion, it's part of who we are. I think what the last couple of years have ignited, if I can say it that way, is doubling down and maybe more of a comfort to talk about it in different ways. I think one of the things that was a real learning for me during the pandemic and some of the unthinkable things that were happening was we all came together and we were talking in different ways. And I think the organization found that really helpful. It just created more of an ease, and the team that leads DEI has a kind of this round circle, and they talk about educate, participate, advocate, and I really, really liked that because it started with educate, and that's what we spent some time doing was talking to each other. So in any event, I do think over the last couple of years, it's not that we just started because we have had a number of business resource groups, for more than a decade. It was really coming to grips with what we're trying to do, being very clear about the expectations, and being honest in ways that we hadn't been. One of the things that was really important to me personally was we were all clear on what we mean. And so we worked with someone who was supporting our efforts. And I just love the simplicity of how we came to this. And it's, what does diversity mean? What does inclusion mean? What does equity mean? What does equality mean? Everybody's kind of throwing these words around. What do they actually mean? And then how do we map our actions against them? And diversity for us is the mix. It's the complexion. It's what does your organization look like? What do your customers look like? What do your partners look like? Inclusion, and this is important, inclusion is making the mix work. I mean, that's like aha to me. It's making the mix work. We can talk about business results, you can talk about the outputs, but if you get all the way back to the core, inclusion is making the mix work. You're getting the best of everybody, all their experiences, all their backgrounds. And then, equity is a promise, it's a value, or equality, I'm sorry. Equality is a promise or a value that everybody will be treated not differently because of who they are. And then equity is the scorecard. Did you achieve it? Okay? And so we have, we have taken our business resource groups as a real grounding point in the organization. But we've also created, I'll call them targeted plans within each of our teams. And I say this targeted and tailored, and it's really important because what we created 3 high-level goals for CDW. But high-level goals are high-level goals, and there are always unintended consequences. And when we talk about the hire rate, the retention rate for different groups, we have those, and we're tracking ourselves. But we went all the way down to the manager level, and the coworker services team, I give them great credit, worked with leaders and said, what do you need specifically? Let's look at your team. It was a very tailored, very personalized approach to the team, and that was in everybody's goals last year. That's a how. That's a real how. And it's not a broad brush stroke. It's much more surgical. And then it's let me help you to get there. And so if I look at where we were in 2020, when we had a lot of sadness and anger and rage, and the conversations that we had over that year and into 2021. And what I would say now is there's tremendous support amongst our teams. There is belief, it's a really important word, belief that inclusion is the key to equality and equity, and inclusion makes us a better organization. There is a conviction to stand up for each other and be there for each other, and to ensure people feel like they can, in fact, show up like their authentic selves. And there is a programmatic approach to getting things done, because all of that sounds really good. But if you don't have the team, and again, I come back to our coworker services, if you don't have the team that is helping you and giving you the tools, then it's much harder to get there. And if I landed on a word for CDW, a word I'm most proud of, it's probably trust. I think trust is the most important word in our lexicon, trust. If you don't have trust, you don't have anything. And I think that we developed a different level of trust between ourselves, among ourselves, and with each other over the past couple of years. We're not always going to get it right, but I feel like that basis of trust is a silver lining coming out of all this. So we also just, one thing that's been very important was to understand where technology could, really drive diversity and inclusion in the world. So we've started to focus our efforts more and more on the digital divide and technology enabling opportunity and impact, and working with our partners to do that, bringing together power. Ecosystems working together nowadays are much more important. So bringing our power behind those things that technology can help to drive access and equality has been a real focus over the past couple of years too.
Let's move on. I don't mean to shift and just abruptly go to the next.
Having a conversation. We could talk for a long time up here.
But I want to make sure we hit this one because you and I talked about this. What we all face today related to talent, and is CDW facing some of those same things with talent in your organization and kind of the movement of talent these days and the kind of attrition that a lot of organizations are dealing with. And I think the second question really related to that is, what have you shifted and done different? And you've talked about a number of those things, right? It's the inspiring your coworkers. It's them having a purpose. That tends to make people want to stay with the organization. But are there other things that you can share that you've put in place to try and address some of those shifts and attrition that's going on?
Yeah, it's I'd start with it as it's the long game, right? And it's about belief in the career, not just kind of a stop on one's career. And so I have talked about a lot of the things that I believe drive that. Let me share this. I think this is a great way to visualize how we think about the office, for example, and what we're changing. And this is Chris Corley, our Chief Commercial and Operating Officer, who runs all of our sales and technical organizations. And that, by the way, is a very difficult journey to figure out, going from a sales organization where you get energy and buzz and learning and apprenticeship in the office to what do we do now? Okay, so that takes a lot of thought and a lot of open-mindedness and a lot of kind of pioneering things. And where she landed was this notion of CDW's offices should be a watering hole. We shouldn't put up fences. You can keep people someplace by putting up fences, or you can create a watering hole. And I walked in this morning, and I turned to Sarah and I said, it's like, I feel it. It's a watering hole. You want to be here. So I would say the biggest thing that we are doing post-pandemic is, yes, flexibility. And as I explained, why do we need to be together? But really making sure that our physical locations are watering holes. They're places that people want to be. Another thing I learned from my parents, like, you can push people, force them, and you can try every which way to get people to do something. It's got to come from in here. People have to want to do it, and they have to believe they can do it, because people make choices every day. So we're trying to create the watering hole where people make the choice to come into the office and people make the choice to stay at CDW. I mean, I don't have any magic bullet, but I think that concept right there is magical. And I give Chris all the credit. I mean, it's a beautiful way to talk about it, and we can all get on board. Is this watering hole or is this fences? Well, that's fences. No, this is a watering hole. This is real. Let's do this.
Right, which then again inspires, right, feeds people, connects them, drives a connectivity and a loyalty to the purpose of the organization.
Yes, yes. And, we did talk when we were talking before about community. And I don't want to miss that, because that was also something, it's always been important to CDW, but community now is much more important. So how do we actually create communities within geographies, for example, teams that aren't part of teams, but actually driving community at scale? It's critically important, and we know when we look at the generations, and we hire a lot of young adults out of college. Purpose, but then connection to community, connection to things that matter to them are so important. So, I don't want to suggest that we're doing something new. We're just doubling down. I'm having a great time. I don't know. I hope the coworkers are too. But I'm trying to get to all of our offices as we're opening and see people and be with people and talk to them and hear and learn and ask questions. And one of the things that we're very consciously doing is joining in on things they're volunteering, so that we can get to know each other, be together, but doing it in an environment that we're giving back, because we've heard from coworkers that really matters. So.
And I think that's what we discussed is the great rebalance. I think there's a lot of, during this time, rethinking the multiple prongs of what is important to us and what is our purpose holistically, right, across many different areas. And I've seen within our organization and many others that it's much more important to have the balance now around, yes, I need to have purpose for my community. I need to have purpose with my coworker. I need to align with the vision and the purpose of the organization. And that is what drives my inspiration to stay and do and build and be within that organization. And there's a different focus on that today than there was 2 years ago.
Yeah, there is. I think it all comes back to caring, because when all those things that you said happen, people then, it's coming from inside again. They care. They care about their job. They care about doing the best that they can and being there for each other. So I think that's what it drives. It's certainly it's an affinity for the organization, because we're a place that coworkers want to be, I hope. But I can't emphasize enough the concept of choice. I take people who choose to be someplace every day versus those who feel like they must be there.
Yeah. Well, you used the word energy earlier. That's a different energy you bring to the table, right?
Yep.
Very different. Yep. I want to just kind of summarize a little bit. I think you talked to us about kind of your life story and your family. And what I picked up in that are the values and the collaboration and the caring and the passion that you learned as you grew up in the family you did. And I personally thank you for taking that and converting that into a group of coworkers that what you do every day and what you've done for the last 2 years has probably impacted the companies of 99% of the people in this room. And it made a difference for all of us.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And that
And
is,
to your coworkers.
well,
right?
and that's it. It's the coworkers, making technology work. And it is so the world can, do great things. And I appreciate that. I do want to, I think we're probably running out of time, but landing on the energy, if I were to reflect back on the 2 years that's just gone by, because I've done that a lot, and on this piece of energy, I think that I'm hopeful that going forward that we all, always take a moment, like the power of pause, take a moment and decide what energy we're going to bring to the table. Because I certainly look back and there were times when I was not bringing the energy that I should have brought. And I reflect but I ask myself why, go back to all those whys. Why was I not? What should I be doing differently, et cetera? And you just notice it. When you're on video, you can see it on people's faces. And I think that's incredibly important. And I'm going to share, going into the pandemic, Sarah Enlow on my team over there, who's wonderful, she related this quote to me that I thought was great. And it was, sometimes joy brings a smile to your face, sometimes a smile brings joy. And so it's the intentionality of just recognizing the little things, choosing joy and positivity to show up that way. And I'll tell you, yesterday I was in the office in Lincolnshire, and there was one of our coworkers was walking in front of us with a box and a plant. That was joy for me. I'm like, and where's Aletha? Aletha, basically, when I told her today, she said that means she's coming back to water that plant. So that was, to me, that was my joy for the day and put me in the positive mindset.
We notice different things 2 years later, and we need to remember to employ that difference every day, ongoing, because we do show up different today, and we can continue to show up different. We need to retain some of the things we've learned and understood over the last few years.
Yep.
Yeah. So I am going to close this up because we are getting close to time. Again, an amazing story of what you've done with your team of coworkers here, and the inspiration that you give within your organization allows them to then turn and work with all of us in a very unique way, because again, most of us are your customer. And I'm just learning the story. I left even more impressed than I was when I came in. And getting some time with you one-on-one and being able to understand a little bit more about that story was an absolute honor. So I want to thank you on behalf of all of us who got to spend time with you today and share your story with you.
Well, let me just say thank you for all of everyone who's watching who is a customer. Thank you. And we hope we're serving you well, because we really do think about ourselves in service to whatever the mission is that you are trying to achieve, educating people, saving lives, whatever it might be. And I know we have a number of CDW coworkers here today and others watching, and I would say I'd turn it around. You inspire me every day. I couldn't do what each of you do, but you inspire me every day, and I thank you for that. So.
Thanks for joining us.